To the places where you're going to stay for more than 1 month.
Okay, Australia.
3 months ago.
Then you know Kelly and Abhinava, right? You could talk to them because they're always happy to help with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'll be there for a while.
Okay, good luck.
Okay. Jai Shri Gurudev. Om Jnana Timinandasya Gyananjana Gadadhar Prabhu, please join us.
How?
Gadadhar, look, we have the other Gadadhar, and it's Gadadhar Pandit's disappearance day. I mean, like, what more? Today is the disappearance day of Gadadhar Pandit, and I was going to talk about him.
Pandit?
And Gadadhar Pandit's here, and you're Gadadhar. I mean, like, how much more Gadadhar do you want?
Well, if it was Gadadhar, that was his appearance day, then I would consider. No, I will come. I'm just going to give this a day.
Disappearance.
He named after Gadadhar Das.
That's what he said, but I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think Gurudev would have named him after. I mean, I'm sure Gurudev named him after. Yeah. Also, there was one incident when Saraswati Didi presented him to Srila Gurudev, and Srila Gurudev, for the very first time, and he's like a few months old, and at that time Srila Gurudev said, Your daughter's name is Radha. He told that to Saraswati.
And Saraswati said, no, it's a boy.
No, Gurudev had named him. Gurudev was like, it was some type of, he was transcendental play, Gurudev had given the name. Gurudev knew already he'd been born and he was a boy and he was but when he saw him for the first time, that was what Gurudev said, So anyway, just to say that when Gurudev gave him that name, I'm sure he meant, Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. Anyway. So today is a very, very special day for us. The divine disappearance day of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. Today is the Amavasya day, the dark moon day, and Srila Gurudev would often mention that Srila Sridhar Maharaj, she also left on the Amavasya day, and there is some link there also on how Srila Sridhar Maharaj had so much affinity for both Bhakti Vinod Thakur and for Gadadhar Pandit. Srila Gurudev also mentioned that it is a symbol of humility, leaving on the dark moon day, and we see very there's no accident that they left on this day. And this morning we heard one talk of Srila Gurudev. I think it was 92 in San Jose, and he was very naturally, very beautifully kind of interweaving discussion of both Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Gadadhar Pandit. This very smooth way, and saying how Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he had so much appreciation, so much affinity for Gadadhar Pandit, and how the most worshipable deity of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur was Gaur Gadadhar, which is very special and gives us some idea of what level Vaishnava Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur was, because that is very high type of worship. Only the highest Vaishnava could perform such worship. And he had in his residence in Godrumadweep and Navadweep, he worshipped deities of Gaur Gadadhar, and then there were very few deities. In Champahati, the deities of Dvija Vaninath, the associate of Mahaprabhu, also there's the famous Gaur Gadadhar deities, and I don't know, maybe one or two others, yeah. And there was one occasion when somebody suggested to Srila Gurudev, or asked him, when he was thinking what what type of worship, which deity he would, worship in the middle of Govinda Kund. Somebody brought up the suggestion of Gaur Gadadhar. Why don't you worship Gaur Gadadhar there? And Srila Gurudev said, that is the personal chamber of bhajan of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He's qualified, for that very high worship. And we are not. Well, it is a very, fine conception and very, susceptible to sahajiyism. So we are very careful to, when we approach such a conception. Srila Sridhar Maharaj wrote a very, extraordinary, definitive article about Gadadhar Pandit, and it was published, I think, in one of the Gaudiya Darshan magazines, and he gave a very wonderful analogy there to explain the position, the service of the relationship between Gadadhar Pandit and Mahaprabhu. And he said, like when a man is serving the deity, and his wife is assisting him in his worship, in his puja. He's the man, he's serving the deity, and his wife is assisting, handing various paraphernalia. And so there's their personal, they have some amorous relationship between themselves. But in this particular, context, there's no touch of that, And so similarly, although Srila Gadadhar Pandit is, we are told, the avatar of Srimati Radharani and Mahaprabhu Krishna, their relationship is not as it normally is, the relationship between Shri Radha Krishna. So we will not go to think of them in that way. And Srila Gurudev spoke about how Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had so much appreciation and attachment for the Nadia Leela of Mahaprabhu in his earlier years, when he was beginning the Sankirtan movement and before he took sannyas. That is for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and particularly Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he expressed that sentiment of having attachment to that Navadvip Leela of Mahaprabhu. And so, on our altars, we are not worshipping the sannyas form of Mahaprabhu, but really, what was that form of Mahaprabhu so beloved to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur? That is who we are worshipping, Mahaprabhu in his Navadvip dress, with the Pancha Tattva, engaging in Kirtan, Shiva Sangam. And there's in particular a beautiful line, beautiful verse of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's in the Navadvip Bhava Taranga, where he's expressing this like a deep mood of separation and some like divine lamentation, saying, it begins Ami Chai Gaur Chandre Loite Maya Pode. I want to see, that's Gauranga Mahaprabhu, And he's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is envisioning himself observing Mahaprabhu when he comes to Navadvip 5 years after having taken sannyas. He first goes to Vidyanagar, and the crowd is just extraordinary. There's some descriptions of that in Chaitanya Bhagavat, how the Ganges was full of people, and people were standing on branches, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj said when he read that, he thought, some exaggeration, some scriptural exaggeration. But then he said he witnessed Gandhi's movement, and how so many thousands, I don't know the figures, but thousands, how many thousands and thousands of people would gather in the streets, in for the cause of Mahatma Gandhi. And when Srila Sridhar Maharaj saw that, he thought, oh yes, it is possible, If so many can come for Mahatma Gandhi, then what to speak of Mahaprabhu. And so Srila Bhakti, and so the crowds were so huge. Mahaprabhu, he went up onto the rooftop of Vijayavachaspati, so everyone could see him, and he wasn't submerged by the crowds. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he envisions himself as a member of that crowd and seeing this form of Mahaprabhu as a sannyasi. And it is painful for him. I want to see that Mahaprabhu with his beautiful curling hair and his beautiful, silken pleated dhoti, dancing and chanting in the house of Shiva Sangam. This I don't want to see, this form of Mahaprabhu. And anyhow, that Mahaprabhu in the company of Gadadhar Pandit also, he was very, socially very close to Mahaprabhu I'm not sure if he was born in Navadvip, but I think so, right?
I think he was actually born elsewhere than when he was a young boy.
Okay. I think he went to...
near present day Chittagong,
Okay, where he was born. Okay.
He was just a small child.
Right. Because I think he went to the same school as Mahaprabhu.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They were classmates.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Gadadhar was like about a year or so younger, so perhaps at a level just slightly beneath.
Right.
Almost the same age.
Okay. But they were like socially in the same type of group. So from like his early years, they were knew of one another, and of course Mahaprabhu, he went through his leela of being the great Nimai Pandit and like a proud scholar, and at that time their relation was not so close, and we hear even that Mahaprabhu, he would tease the devotees, and sometimes if Gadadhar or others, they're approaching one another on the street, then they might cross over to the other side, because Mahaprabhu would give them a hard time, But then when Mahaprabhu went to Gaya to perform his father's last rites, then he met Ishwar Puri, and he bestowed his mercy on Ishwar Puri by accepting him as his guru. Then he came back showing himself to have been completely converted, and he began to show this mood of divine love and separation. And then his relationship with Gadadhar was more intimate. But Gadadhar, he's always described as being very shy, and he would keep some distance, very close, but keeping a little distance, very shy, very humble, very respectful. Gurudev told of how when Mahaprabhu, he held the first meeting with the Vaishnavas, he came back and he called a meeting, he sent the word out, please, I need to express my heart, I want to meet with all the Vaishnavas. Then they met, and I can't remember whose house it was, maybe Shuklam Bar's house, I'm not sure, but he was picking flowers, and there was some discussion, right, that Mahaprabhu wants to meet tonight. Maybe it wasn't his house.
I think it was Shuklam.
Yeah, I think it was too, okay. And so at a certain point, Mahaprabhu was venting his heart, and in a nearby room, they could hear somebody crying, and Mahaprabhu asked, who's that? And then the devotees told him, oh, it is your Gadadhar, it is your Gadadhar. So Gadadhar was like feeling this, like this sympathetic, this sympathy for Mahaprabhu's pain, and crying as a result of that, but shy, keeping some distance. He was like a shadow. Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Gurudev, they've described him as like a shadow of Mahaprabhu. Srila Sridhar Maharaj described it like someone who's had their most valuable possession, it has been stolen from them, And then they're running after, the thief, So in that way, like we're always singing in this beautiful arti song of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Majirahi Bamshida. No, what's the line? Majirahi Bamshida Vigoshe Bamshida Radhara Samparayami Gauranga Sundar Radha Bhava Kantiyang Radha Rasa Choyo Swada Rahasha Prayash Nidaki Prafula Radha Mukhe Mandahas. There Srila Sridhar Maharaj is describing that so beautifully, how Krishna has taken that inner wealth of Srimati Radharani, and then he's very happy. Radhara Sampadayami Gauranga Sundar. In the glory of my Radha, I have become Gauranga Sundar. I put that on a web page once when I was helping Mahananda Prabhu, Madhusudan Maharaj, with the website. I put that on I would help him making web pages, and sometimes I'd write the captions, and there was some, I think it was the DT in Australia, I put that line, Majirahi Bamshirave. In the middle is the flute player, Krishna, and he declares, Radhara Sampadayami Gauranga Sundar. And Srila Gurudev, they would show Gurudev the website and everything, and when he saw that, he was so happy, that line, he likes that very much, and he was very inspired by it, and he spoke about it for some time. And that Srila Sridhar Maharaj's wonderful composition. So, Krishna is taken like a thief, in Srila Sridhar Maharaj's words, after he's plundered the wealth of the heart of Radharani, what's left over, what is the remainder? That is Gadadhar. And so, this is like so over our head, we cannot, this is like the, if you think about, or at least if I try to think about this too much, my head's going to explode. So this very, unique position of Gadadhar Pandit. So always staying very close to Mahaprabhu, and then when Mahaprabhu went to Puri, Gadadhar, he also went, and he took Kshetra sannyas, a vow never to remain in Puri for his entire life, and he worshipped his Gopinath deity. And Mahaprabhu, almost every day he would go there that temple is very close to our. Have you been to our temple in Puri? Okay, one day you'll go there. You've been there before. Radharani has not been yet. Next time. But our temple is actually very close to that temple. It's walking distance, the Tota Gopinath temple of Gadadhar Pandit. And that, our temple, Gurudev was always extremely cautious and humble when he was going to buy some land, especially in the Dham. And he did not want that place or that area originally, because it's like it's like a special location, but he was trying to get somewhere more in the outskirts, but it didn't work out, and then this place just like landed in his lap. So he, it's close to Chatak Parvat, the ocean where Mahaprabhu would go, and it's right next to the Toto Gopinath temple. But Gadadhar would stay there, and very, very renounced nature, Gadadhar, like we hear also, especially about Raghunath Das Goswami and others, extremely renounced and not taking proper care of himself. Gurudev said sometimes Mahaprabhu would tell him, "I'm going to take lunch at your place today," just so that Gadadhar would be motivated to make something more substantial, like some feast, and then he'd make sure Gadadhar would also eat it. The Gurudev said, like make sure he got some vitamins, something like that. And almost every day, Gadadhar, Mahaprabhu would visit to hear Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. And that, this is the supreme seva of Gadadhar Pandit. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj has, in such an extraordinarily beautiful way, described this in this verse that he wrote for. He was writing. He was compiling. It was a collection of verses, of the principal verses of Bhagavatam. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he compiled, what's it called? Arka Marichi? Bhagavat Arka Marichi Mala. 1,000 of the principal verses. He received some instruction from Sri Damodar himself, and he compiled 1,000 principal verses of Bhagavatam. And then Srila Sridhar Maharaj had the inspiration to further condense it to 300 verses, and he was never able to finish it, and Gurudev also was never able to finish it. He did ask Gurudev to finish it, but Gurudev wasn't ever able to finish it. But what we do have is there's a few introductory verses that Srila Sridhar Maharaj wrote for that. So one of them is that famous verse glorifying Srimati Radharani, Yadamiya Mahima, that describing how she's present in every syllable of Bhagavatam. And there's another one which is a pranam to Bhagavatam, which Tagi Maharaj just recently found. And then another one is this pranam to Gadadhar Pandit, which is just extraordinary. Nilam bodhitate saraswa viraha kshepanvitam bandhavam Srimad Bhagavati Srimad Bhagavati Katha. I think that's the third line. Sanayanashu Pujaya. That's the second line. Srimad Bhagavatam Goswami Prabhudur Vibhurbhuyat Madeka Gati. Okay, we're more or less there. It's a mouthful, that verse. But describing how on the shore of the blue ocean, Mahaprabhu, who is that's the part we're missing. Swaviraha. No, that's in the first line. Nilambuni today Saraswa Viraha. This is just extraordinary. He's experiencing separation from himself. Mahaprabhu is experiencing separation from himself. How is that possible, Gadadhar? Because he's Krishna in the mood of Radharani. So he is Krishna in the mood of Radharani, experiencing separation from Krishna. This is just inconceivable. So he's in this, deep, intense state of suffering and separation from his own self. And so then his very dear friend, his bandhu, Gadadhar, who is, Radharani, she is supplying the wine of Bhagavatam. What is the second line? Srimad
Bhagavati Katha Madhiraya Sanjivaya Bhatiya.
He's giving some nourishment in the form of Bhagavat Katha, in this Sanjivaya, like enlivening him, giving him some life, some energy. And so the Bhagavatam is compared to a type of wine, like if someone's suffering some heartbreak, then they may go to drown their sorrows in some, alcohol. So this Bhagavat, wine, Bhagavatam, Gadadhar is nourishing him with that. Jai Shishi Guru Rangadadhar Giridhari Jai. And meanwhile, if our heads are not already exploding, then it also describes this beautiful, how Swanayanashu Pujayan, how Mahaprabhu's in this very intense state, and meanwhile Gadadhar, he's also in this very intense state, observing Mahaprabhu's condition, and so tears are falling from his eyes, and he's like these lotus-like tears. They're worshipping the pages of Bhagavatam. The flower tears are falling from his eyes, and doing puja to Bhagavatam. And he's reading, and his tears are literally washing away the letters of Bhagavatam. And we hear later when Srinivasacharya, it's Srinivas, right? When Srinivasacharya came to Puri with the inspiration to learn Bhagavatam from Gadadhar, then Gadadhar told him, "I'm sorry, I ruined my copy. I washed away the pages. You'll have to go and get a new copy made." Goswami Prabhupada Gadadhar Vibhur Bhuyat Man Ekagati. May that best of Goswami, Srila Gadadhar Pandit, be my only shelter, or may his satisfaction be my only goal in composing this work. So this is the extraordinary service of Gadadhar Pandit, and there's so many wonderful pastimes of Gadadhar Pandit. There's the very famous one you all know, when Mukunda brings him to meet Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Did you hear this story? It's a very nice story. Well, there was one Vaishnav who he was a very wealthy Vaishnav. His name is Pundarik, and Navadvip. Now Navadvip's a little different, but in those days Navadvip was a very wealthy. It was like a center in India, very wealthy place. Very cultured, very educated people. And so rich people would often have like their holiday home in Navadvip. The Ganges is there, and then they have their normal home. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he was a very wealthy Vaishnava, and he had like a home there in Navadvip, and he came to visit Chattagram. I think it's Chattagram where he's from. And Mukunda's from that same village, right? And so Mukunda knew Pundarik, and he knew what a great Vaishnava he was, but no one else knew about him. And so Pundarik, he came, and he wanted to be a little anonymous, and so he came quietly for some visit. And Mukunda, he knew he was visiting, and he told Gadadhar, "Oh, would you like to see a Vaishnava? Would you like to meet a new Vaishnava?" And Gadadhar was extremely happy. What is better in life than to meet a new Vaishnava? So Gadadhar said, yes, I would like that very much. And so Mukunda brought him to the home of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. But Gadadhar was puzzled because he saw, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he was not like any other Vaishnava that he'd met before. He didn't have his head shaved like you. He had very long curling hair and very rich silken dress, and he was reclining on this very fancy bed with silken sheets and big comfortable pillows, and he had a servant who was fanning him, and he was also smoking some pipe. And Gurudev knew the type of tobacco. I don't know how. I don't know if that's in the scripture. But Gurudev mentioned, I don't remember the name, but Gurudev mentioned the name. And he said, very expensive tobacco. And so he's smoking this pipe. And he also had a spittoon, like a spit thing next to him, for when he's chewing pan, and then you see the Indians, they like to chew this, and then they have to spit this red, juice. So, he didn't look like your average Vaishnava, and Gadadhar was completely bewildered when he saw this, and they started some conversation, Mukunda and Pundarik. Pundarik was happy to meet Gadadhar, and Gadadhar is feeling uncomfortable, and he's thinking, I'd like to get out of this situation. How can I get out of this? And Mukunda, he knows, what Gadadhar is thinking. It's natural. Anyone would be a little puzzled. You're told you're being brought to meet a great Vaishnava, and you see this, you'd be a little, puzzled. So then Mukunda, he starts to sing, and Mukunda is known, right, for his very sweet singing voice also, and he started to sing this verse from Bhagavatam, very wonderful verse. Aho bhakyam tanakalakutam jigham saya payavarapyasadi lebega tindachi uchitam tutonyam kamvadailam sharanam merjema. Describing, how Putana, she was so wicked, and she came to try to kill Krishna, smearing poison on her breast. But Krishna, how merciful is Krishna? He gave her a position like a nursemaid in the Vrindavan Leela. He did not consider her offense. He thought she wants to nurse me, and he gave her that. He completely forgave her and gave her that kind of position. So, kamvadayalam sharanam brajema, to whom else shall I go for shelter? Who is more merciful? What more of a merciful shelter will I find, other than Krishna? To whom else can I surrender, other than Krishna? And so then Pundarik, when he heard that, he became like a madman, and he began tearing at his hair and began rolling on the ground and knocking things over and repeating this kamva dayalam sharanam vrajema. Who is more merciful? To whom else shall I approach for shelter other than Krishna? And so Gadadhar, he saw this, and he was astonished, and he began to feel very bad, because he thought, I was thinking so badly of him, and now I see, what a great Vaishnava he is. And so he considered to himself, how can I mitigate my offense? And so he thought, I must ask him for initiation, because he had not received Diksha yet. Because the Guru does not consider the offenses of the disciple. And the guru is like the father. The father does not consider the offenses of the son. And so he asked permission from Mahaprabhu first. He did, right? And Mahaprabhu happily gave that. And, this is also very significant because Pundarik is Vrishabhanaraj, the father of Radharani and Krishna Lila. So this was their eternal relationship. And we also hear that Mahaprabhu, when Pundarik Vijayanidhi arrived in town, he would sometimes just suddenly start calling out Bap, meaning father. He had that sentiment, and nobody could understand, what Mahaprabhu was meaning by that. So anyhow, Gadadhar, he received initiation from Pundarik Vijayanidhi. And then later, in Puri, in his, ecstatic state, Gadadhar forgot the mantra that he'd received. and then he asked Mahaprabhu, I forgot my mantra, can you give me connection, give me diksha? And Mahaprabhu, he here showed an example, not to cross over the guru, and he said, no, your Pundarik is coming here in the near future, he's coming soon, you ask him, But, he is your guru, your connection is with him. He was very, very shy, very humble nature always. Gurudev, he said how the Vaishnavas, they would take advantage of Gadadhar and others sometimes, but Gadadhar would never take advantage of anyone, And there's this, it's on the website, I think. Somebody asked Gurudev, what do you mean by that? What do you mean he takes advantage? And Gurudev said, like someone will say, I am a disciple of Govinda Maharaj. Like I have some position, like asserting oneself, But he said Gadadhar would never do like that, He was always very, very humble nature. And there's a very nice example of that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think we mentioned this a few days ago, but when Vallabhacharya, he comes to Puri, and he's like awkwardly trying to establish himself, but Mahaprabhu doesn't give him the time of day, and then nobody else will, because Mahaprabhu's not, He like says, I've written 100 explanations of the name of Krishna, and I've written commentary of Bhagavatam, and so on and so forth. And Mahaprabhu dismisses him. And so then Vallabhacharya tries to go to others, hoping they'll hear from him. But because Mahaprabhu dismissed him, then nobody will hear. And then he goes to Gadadhar, And Gadadhar, because his nature is so humble and respectful, so shy, then he's thinking, oh, he's a Brahmin, he's a Vaishnava, and how can I say no? And so he just tolerates and hears. And there's a nice comment there, how Gadadhar, he was not happy to hear this or to be in this situation, but he felt like he couldn't do otherwise. And it mentions how he thought to himself, the other Vaishnavas, they may criticize me for this, but Mahaprabhu knows my heart. And I find that very, very encouraging, very helpful, because sometimes we're in situations like that where we take some particular decision and we know not everybody's going to understand, and there will be some who criticize us for that, but we know why we're doing it, and we know, Guru, Mahaprabhu, they know our heart, they will understand, why we've taken some particular course of action. But then, as a result of that tolerance, by the influence of Gadadhar's association, Vallabhacharya, had some purification, and he ended up taking initiation from Gadadhar. And so Srila Sridhar Maharshi comments on that the true meaning of tolerance came out there. Which is very, illuminating. Because, why, sometimes it's hard to tolerate, but if we tolerate with this spirit of optimism, like a hopeful type of tolerance, that something better is going to come out of this, We're like this optimistic and hopeful mood. That is the purpose, Like we experienced with Srila Gurudev. He wouldn't necessarily always, tell you when you were doing something wrong, but he's tolerating and waiting for you to figure it out, Not in every case, of course, but we saw that often with him. So, Gadadhar Pandit, his Divine Disappearance Day, and also Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who has, really given us everything. Where would we be, without Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur? Srila Sridhar Maharshi wrote this wonderful verse, encapsulating all the gifts of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Guru Dham, Grantha Dham, Gaur Dhamadam, Namadam, Bhakti Dham, Buridam, Vande Bhakti Vinodakam Sada. He's given us, first and foremost, Guru Dham. He's given us Guru in the form of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It was, Srila Saraswati Thakur who, Srila Gurudev has mentioned, in terms of how we will practice Krishna consciousness, here and now. We won't look past Srila Saraswati Thakur. Srila Saraswati Thakur, he has established how we will practice Krishna consciousness in this age. And because people get confused, right, Oh, but the Goswamis, they lived like this and they did like that, One of our young devotees has some idea he's supposed to chant 100,000 names every day. It's very easy to get lost, if you look at, what so many great Vaishnavas did. And they're all great Vaishnavas. And they did this practice, they did that practice, very easily you can get confused. So, we're following how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has outlined for us. And it was Srila Saraswati Thakur who conceived, this, organized practice, who conceived of bringing this. Actually, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he first conceived of bringing it to the West. But then Srila Saraswati Thakur, he really put that into motion and instilled that necessity in the hearts of his disciples. And so then Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, with that pounding in his heart, my Guru Maharaj wants this, 69 years old. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gave us Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in every sense. He prayed to the Lord, please, give one of your own men. I've done something, but I need somebody else to complete my work. I need some, revolutionary to come and really, fulfill this mission. And then he also, put pressure on Srila Saraswati Thakur, because he was not, in the beginning, so inclined to go out and to mix and to, spread this preaching mission. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur put some pressure on him to take up, this responsibility, and instructed him. So, Gurudam and Grantadam. He gave us scripture, he composed like over 100 of his own works, right? And he also like revived these, principal Vaishnava texts, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Upadeshamrita. There were a number of texts that were like, kind of forgotten or lost, and he put them back into circulation, wrote commentaries on them, and then also gave us so many of his own books, composed so many songs, which we're singing every day, twice a day. Srila Gurudev said that when he was growing up, Narottam Thakur was the head of the songs department, like in the Vaishnav culture that he grew up in. But when he came to join the Mat, then Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he had that position. So he's given us all of these wonderful songs, gave us this, Sharanagati collection of songs, which contains everything in a very concise and very sweet way. Many of these songs, there's like heavy siddhanta in there. Like we can just like beat our heads, it's so heavy, some of these, but in this very like digestible and sweet, format. And so in this very like kind of organic way, these songs could like, become a part of people's daily lives. Goradam, he revealed, Goradam, as Rup and Sanatan, they revealed Vrindavan Dham. So Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he revealed the birthplace of Mahaprabhu and established a committee to take care of that and to further the the importance of the Dham, the message of Mahaprabhu. Namadam, he gave us the conception of the pure name, as we've heard, Srila Sridhar Maharaj wrote this wonderful composition, the Bhakti Vinod Viraha Dashakam, which Srila Saraswati Thakur was so extremely pleased with. And maybe we can just there's this one verse which is describing the atmosphere when Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur appeared, how degraded the so-called followers of Mahaprabhu had become. I'll just read this. Bhakti Vinod Thakur came and like cleans the field. This is verse number 4 of this composition. Dharmascharma gato gataiva satata yogascha bogatmako gyane shunya gatir japena tapasa kyatir jigham saivacha. And I'm hearing Gurudev's voice like chanting this. Gurudev would just recite this, just on the top of his head, and so fluently. Dane dambikata. There was one morning, I'll never forget, it was one morning, was it 2008? It's on the website, but there was one morning, the recording, there was one morning, it was the appearance day of Bhakti Vinod Thakur in September, and that morning Gurudev had not given darshan, he wasn't showing himself to be so well, and so we didn't see him, and then later on in the morning, I don't know, maybe it was 7 or 8, or then I was going past his room, and I saw he was sitting up, and so I thought, I'll just go in and pay dandavat. So I went in, and I was just going to give dandavat in the doorway and then go out. But I went in and I saw he was just spontaneously beginning to glorify Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And it was, and because it was like at an unexpected time, there was just a few there. But it was, to hear Srila Gurudev, describing Bhakti Vinod Thakur, it's so natural and so, so spontaneous, so wonderful. So, but in that talk, he chanted, many of these verses. Dane dambikata nuraga bhajane dushta pacharo yada buddhim buddhimatam vibeda hitada dacha bhavan preshita. At a time when religion was evaluated in terms of bodily relationship, saintliness was determined by ignorance, and yoga practice was motivated by sensual pleasure. When scholarship was cultivated just for voidism, japa was conducted for the sake of fame, and penance was performed out of vindictiveness. When charity was given out of pride, and on the pretext of spontaneous devotion, the most gross sinful acts were perpetrated. And in all such anomalous situations, even the intelligentsia were at loggerheads with one another. At that very time, you were sent by the Almighty Creator. And we've heard how there was this one Vaishnav, Tota Ramdas or something. He put together, he surveyed the fields, and he made a list of these 13 different apasidantic, some so-called sampradayas. That in the name of Mahaprabhu, they were, engaging in so many, deviant practices. So 13 different groups, who called themselves followers of Mahaprabhu, but they were completely misrepresenting, polluting the conception. So it was a mess, and as we hear, the respectable society, they were, disgusted. We hear Srila Sridhar Maharaj's father, he was, he had very bad impression of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Because, it's interesting, because Mahaprabhu, he's sometimes seen as like a socialist, right, or a communist, because he didn't put importance on, caste, creed, position. So Sridhar Maharaj, we hear, he said his father had this conception that people who can't do anything else, they go and join Mahaprabhu's group. They're no good at anything else, can't get a job. Then Mahaprabhu will accept you. So there was some idea like that. But then Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he came, and he was so highly positioned within society. He was employed as a magistrate by the British government. The British government highly respected him. Prestigious position, highly educated, and he was very good friends with the brother of Rabindranath Tagore, right? What is Dwijendranath, I think was his name. So he was mixing with the elite level of society. And so when he started, talking, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur also showed himself as coming to this. It's not like from the beginning, he was born into this, but he was originally, he heard from different groups. He was involved a little with the Brahmo society. And then, so he showed himself as coming over to Mahaprabhu, and there's record of him contemplating and meditating on the superiority of Mahaprabhu, Krishna conception. And then, finally coming to that. So it was a very striking example that this very, like in the same way that Mahaprabhu was a great scholar. He was a famous scholar. And so when he came to take up, the Krishna conception, you can't dismiss that. You have to pay attention. And so, he was like very well positioned to present, the dignity of Mahaprabhu's conception and the Krishna conception of divinity. And it's mentioned how in his very last days, when he was he'd withdrawn from the world, he was living like a Babaji. There were some, what is his name? But he took initiation eventually from Saraswati Thakur. I can't remember his name right now. And he helped with the translation of our Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But him and a few others, they were like barristers or something, like educated, high-class people. They heard about Bhakti Vinod Thakur, how he was this big magistrate, highly situated person in society, and he came to the Gaudiya group. Then they came like out of curiosity to visit him, this is like, we wouldn't normally put these two together. So it was very striking, and he gave so many public lectures and wrote, and I mean the writing of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is just extraordinary, because he's able to write in so many different styles, different, he can write for the British, very British, Christian. He can write for the Indian-minded, and poetry and articles and books and so many different styles and tones. Srila Gurudev, he mentioned the example how Jaiva Dharma, he wrote more for like the Vedic-minded person. Chaitanya Shikshamrita is more for like the Western-minded, more scientific-minded person. And like some of these poems that he wrote, like you just could never imagine, like, a Bengali had written them, I mean, it's just extraordinary. So in this way, he had something for everyone, And Gurudev mentioned how it's very striking, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur was very broad in his preaching style. Very, very broad. But in his personal bhajan, he was very exclusive. It's a very, very nice example. He had this affinity for Shri Gaur Gadadhar, the finest conception. But in terms of his approach, to the world and preaching, he was extremely broad. So it's an interesting example for us. Namadam, Bhaktidam, he gave us the pure conception of devotion. And then Buridam, that literally means something like he gave like so much, he gave like such an abundance. But Srila Maharaj has explained that there he's indicating the service of Radharani, and this is his highest gift, and it's that which was especially Srila Maharaj, he made that point prominently in this composition, and it was that in particular that Srila Saraswati Thakur very much appreciated. The 8th verse, it is here. Shri Gauranumatam Srupa Viditam Rupa Rajainajitam Rupa Dhyai Padiveshitam Raguganer Swaditam Sevitam Shuka Shiva Brahmani Samanitam Shiradha Pada Sevanamritam Aho Tadatam Isho Bhavan. This is ultimately the greatest gift of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the service of Srimati Radharani. What Shri Gauranumatam, what was Mahaprabhu's, conception, what Mahaprabhu came to give. Mahaprabhu came to glorify Radharani, to establish the position of Radharani. to announce her glories. Sarupa Viditam, what was known intimately to Srup Damodar, what was distributed by Rupa, what was adored by Sanatan, what was tasted by Raghunath and his group. Oh, I left out Jiva Goswami. Jiva Dhyay Abhirakshitam, what was protected by Jiva Goswami, and Shuka Shiva Brahmadi Samanitam, which was worshipped from afar by Shuka, Shiva, Brahma, and others. Also Uddhava is mentioned there. From a distance, they cannot, like we're just singing, E Rupa Roti Brahma Shambhu Agochar. This type of worship, it's beyond the vision of them. It is so high. That you can give Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Shiradha Pada Sevanamrita Bhota Datam Ishobhavan, the nectar of the service of the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. So, so high is your position. And that verse, was so much appreciated by Srila Saraswati Thakur. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he mentioned himself, I think it's because of that, on the basis of that he asked me to sing Sri Rupa Manjari Pada when he was leaving the world. And he commented when he received the verse, Srila Saraswati Thakur commented, I'm satisfied that when I leave, at least one man will remain behind, who can represent, what I came to give. And he also commented that, this is so perfect that this is not written by Sridhar Maharaj, but this is actually coming through him, This is Bhakti Vinod Thakur, his own presentation coming through Sridhar Maharaj. So it is so perfect, this verse. It is like perfectly placing all of these prominent acharyas in connection with the gift of Mahaprabhu. So, that divine legacy of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, we are all feeling that today. And he also, it was his vision, that this would spread, And Srila Gurudev mentioned how, when I joined, because Gurudev joined before this explosion happened, right, in 1947, and he said, when I joined the Math, I heard the devotees talking like this, oh, Bhakti Vinod Thakur said, and Mahaprabhu also had said, but Bhakti Vinod Thakur particularly had said within 50 years, And Gurudev thought, well, some exaggeration, maybe sometime in the far distant future. But then Srila Gurudev, he himself witnessed that, It's extraordinary. It really is. It is a mirror. It is miraculous. And in a very short period of time, that Srila Swami Maharaj left India and came to the West. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he first planted the seeds. He sent that book, The Life and Precepts, to McGill University in Canada. So he first started that movement. And then Srila Saraswati Thakur, he took further steps out, sending preachers. And then Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he ignited this, explosion. And then our Gurudev and our Param Gurudev, they have given us some, deeper churning of that, finer conception. Okay, well, I've been talking a lot. Do you want to add anything, Gadadhar?
Yeah, just a couple of things.
Yeah, please.
Interesting how Guru Maharaj talks about, as you were talking about, the relationship between Gadadhar and Mahaprabhu. How Gadadhar represents Radharani, but the shell, whose wealth has been plundered, the rasa, the prema of Radharani has been taken by Mahaprabhu, and that's represented in Mahaprabhu's birth on the full moon, when the moon is full of rasa, and Gadadhar Pandit's birth and disappearance on the new moon, when there's no light, there's no rasa there anymore, and also born in the hot season. So that juxtaposition of the titi, one full for Mahaprabhu and empty. So the wealth of Radharani is symbolized in the moon having lost its rasa to Mahaprabhu, born on the full moon, Gadadhar born on the new moon.
Yes.
And then the connections between Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Gadadhar Pandit. And Guru Maharaj talks about it, although it's not to be liberally or whimsically publicized, that Siddhanta Saraswati in the finishing section of his Anubhasya to Chaitanya Charitamrita mentions that through his divine vision he was able to connect the identities of Swarup Damodar with Gaurapashad as Babaji and Gadadhar Pandit with Bhakti Vinod Thakur.
Right.
But that such, and Guru Maharaj makes the point in this regard that the Leela in Navadvip is actually ongoing, it's eternal. And sometimes it comes to the surface visibly, and sometimes it remains as a subterranean current. But it's Nitya Leela going on there eternally. And that these spiritual personalities are coming, but they're very difficult. It's very difficult to realize, to see them and identify them, is the point that Guru Maharaj makes. But the attribution of the identities, Swarup Damodar, or Gaurapashad as Babaji to Swarup Damodar, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur to Gadadhar Pandit was made by Siddhanta Saraswati. And there's some symptoms that you can see the connection of between Thakur, Bhakti Vinod and Gadadhar Pandit is the worship of Gaura Gadadhar. And the connection made by Guru Maharaj when he is writing that kind of synopsis of the Bhagavatam, the essential verses. He offers his prayers to that sloka to Gadadhar Pandit in the Mangalacharya, and that whole work is a continuation of Thakur Bhakti Vinod's work. So another connection between Gadadhar Pandit and Thakur Bhakti Vinod is Gadadhar Pandit. Well, Gadadhar Pandit is the guru of the Bhagavatam, and Thakur Bhakti Vinod has taken that work of the Bhagavatam and condensed it down into 1,000 kind of essential slokas. Again, forming a connection between Gadadhar Pandit and Bhakti Vinod Thakur, which is then acknowledged by Guru Maharaj, whose plan was to continue that refining or condensing of the Bhagavatam, and first offers prayers to Gadadhar Pandit at the beginning of that. And then third is that they both departed on the new moon, on the Amavasya Tithi.
Yes, that's right. Gadadhar was born on the Amavasya, then he also left on the Amavasya.
Yes. And then of course the fourth aforementioned that Siddhanta Saraswati himself quite clearly states the identity, the inner identity of Gadadhar Pandit. Which of course begs the question, this is an interesting question, if Thakur Bhakti Vinod is Kamala Manjari, and also Gadadhar Pandit, is it Kamala Manjari? Am I getting that wrong?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's that's an interesting transcendental conundrum, perhaps. But one more point I wanted to make was that the departure of Gadadhar Pandit and his deity Tota Gopinath after Mahaprabhu left, even though Gadadhar Pandit was just a little younger than Mahaprabhu, maybe a year or so, he aged very quickly because he was broken-hearted. So his body started to fall apart and deteriorate very quickly. And he couldn't reach up and garland the total Gopinath deity. And so the deity himself sat down out of love and in order to facilitate the service of Gadadhar Pandit, who could then garland him without having to overexert himself. But that's all I wanted to add. And will contribute, yeah. Jai. Jai.
I'd like to sing. No? Okay. Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namaha.
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 Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana. Giridhari Gopinatha Madana Mohana. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra. Radha Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Nairupa Sanatan Bhattara Gunata. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Gunata. Nechai Gosai Kori Charana Vandana. Raha Hoite Vignana Shabishta Purana. Nechai Gosai Jai Muita Dasa. Kansa Pada Pada Renu Mura Panchagratsa. Najara Charana Sebi Bhakta Sane Vasa. Janame Mohe Abhilasha. Nechai Prema Dana. It's on page 143. Jaya Nilo Prema Dana Karuna Prachur Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Vaya Ashtotar Shri Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Vaya Ashtotar Shri Srila Bhakti Raksha Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami Tirabhav Mahamahotsav Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Thakur Premanandi. Jai Gadadhar Prabhu.